All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. I am Andrew, aka Metaphysical Mindgasms, for the purposes of this video, and I'm going to start my my book review series on the book by the French philosopher, seminal French philosopher in metaphysics named Henri Bergson, famous French philosopher who I heard about him because he influenced Deleuze, and I've done videos on some of his work a long time ago with Tim Keefe, aka Chief Keefe, who's my expert and philosopher friend who I've talked with a lot. And so I heard about Bergson because he influenced Deleuze, and I heard about Deleuze because he influenced Foucault. And I thought it would be interesting to get into metaphysics some more. So I'm gonna get into Henri Bergson's book called Intro to Metaphysics. So, in this first part, I'm just going to focus on a small section in which he's talking about specifically ontology to do with the philosophy of metaphysics and the philosophy of ontology, just generally speaking, to somewhat oversimplify it, is the philosophy of what exists or the philosophy of being or something like that. Heidegger's Being and Time, for example, would fall into ontology, although it's actually more like metaphysics because ontology is more of a type of metaphysics. But anyway, he gets into basically a few simple points here, namely that within metaphysics, in terms of ontology, both idealists and realists are wrong. So I pulled up the definitions here of idealism and realism in metaphysics, and I looked at the definitions from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, but I thought they were like a little too complex to take the time reading to people. So I found the Wikipedia definitions, and those are close enough to the accurate definitions that they make sense to work with for the purposes of comparison, which is what Henri Bergson is using them for. So anyway, let's get into this section of the text here. Okay, so he has a number of principles here. So this is the first one. There is a reality that is external and yet given immediately to the mind. So he's talking about the philosophy he's talking about idealism versus realism in metaphysics, right? And and so basically what I'm about to get into in slightly more detail is that basically realists think that reality is external, and idealists think that reality exists in the human mind. So he basically is saying that both of these are wrong. Neither does reality exist externally, well, I guess I should say, neither does reality exist only externally, nor does it exist only in the human mind. So he says, there is a reality that is external and yet given immediately to the mind. So there's an external reality, but it comes immediately to the mind. So we can't experience reality without our experience of this external reality, right? It's impossible to separate the two, which is why it's a false dichotomy, which is why you can easily also criticize dualism in terms of the philosophy of mind, right? So anyway, there's a reality that is external and yet given immediately to the mind, not one or the other, both. Common sense is right on this point that reality is external and yet given immediately to the mind. Common sense is right on this point that external reality is external and yet given to the mind. But common sense is also right on the point that the common sense is right on this point as against the idealism and realism of the philosophers. So it's common sense that philosophical idealism or metaphysical or specifically ontological idealism and realism are wrong to Henri Bergson. So I glossed over those explanations a little bit. So I'm going to go into, I'll pull up these brief definitions here and just explain a little bit of each of them. Metaphysical idealism versus realism, or ontological idealism versus realism. Okay, so right here, ontologically, idealism asserts that the existence of things depends upon the human mind. So like I said, right? If you're an idealist, then reality is mind dependent. It like what is real depends on the mind. So like basically this is debatably meaning that all exists is the mind. There is no external reality. Reality is only in our minds, and our minds manifest reality. So there is no external reality because we are a part of reality, and reality is a part of our minds because reality is conscious to an extent, which is different from panpsychism. This everything is conscious. It's not necessarily that everything is conscious, I should say. It's that everything is mind. That's how you could somewhat sum up idealism to an extent. So ontologically, idealism asserts that the existence of things depends upon the mind. Thus, ontological idealism rejects the perspective of physicalism and dualism. So like I was saying, just as a reminder, ontologically, meaning to oversimplify, the philosophy ontology is the philosophy of what exists. So in terms of the philosophy of what exists, idealism asserts that the existence of things depends upon the human mind. So reality is the mind, and there's no separation. There is no external reality. There is only our minds in terms of what exists. So then, thus, ontological idealism rejects the perspectives of physicalism and dualism. Like I said, dualism is a false dichotomy in that sense, because in terms of philosophy of mind, it's the idea that the mind and the body are separate, and the body is physical and the mind is non-physical. But if we're talking, I guess that's in philosophy of mind. If we're talking about specifically ontology within the realm of metaphysics, then physicalism means that everything that exists is physical. So, like roughly speaking, if we're talking about ontology or metaphysics, then you could oversimplify and say that if you're an idealist, you could say that everything that exists is mind. So everything is mind. And a physicalist would say that everything is physical, meaning not a mind, because a mind is non-physical. So if there is no external reality in metaphysical or ontological idealism, then there is only mind. If you're a physicalist, then that means that nothing is mind. Everything is part of external reality. You still have a mind, but your mind is part of external reality. So this is a false dichotomy. Dualism is a false dichotomy then, if idealism is wrong, because that means that it's neither the case that everything is mind or everything is physical. Everything is physical and mind. Henri Bergson is saying both, that there's an external reality, but it is mind dependent. So it's both. They both exist, but they're also dependent on each other. It's a little complicated, but it's nuanced. It's not oversimplified like a lot of boring metaphysical positions, in my opinion. Anyway, so ontological idealism rejects the perspectives of physicalism and dualism. So I kind of just explained both physicalism and dualism there. Physicalism, the idea that everything exists, in opposition to idealism, Idealism is also similar to realism, really. They're kind of used synonymously. And dualism is the idea that there that there's an external reality that is separate from the non-physical mind. But Henri Bergson is not a dualist either, because that would require saying physical and the non-physical are separate, but he's saying that they're connected. So there is the physical and the non-physical, but they're connected. So he's not a dualist. The two aspects are actually one connected thing. So yeah, it's really fascinating because it's a subtle difference, but I think it makes a lot more sense that way in terms of ontology and metaphysics, that there is an external reality, but it's mind dependent, but or it's influenced by the mind, and our minds are always shaping reality, which changes reality as we shape reality, and as reality changes us, our minds change. So it's a double feedback loop. We change reality, and reality changes us. We change the physical reality changes our minds. Anyway, so ontological idealism rejects the perspectives of physicalism and dualism because neither perspective gives ontological priority to the human mind. That makes sense. So idealism rejects dualism because idealism is, instead of saying that there's a division between the physical and the non-physical, it's that everything is non-physical or everything is mind. All right, so I'm going to go to the definition of realism in metaphysics here. And like I said, it's basically the same thing as physicalism, as I explained, but I think it will be helpful just to go through that, just to clarify a few aspects of what I'm saying, because it gets a little complex, but I think it's really fascinating. All right, so metaphysical realism is the view that most of the objects that populate the world exist independently of our thought and have their natures independently of how, if at all, we conceive of them. So yeah, they're in realism or physicalism, as I was explaining before. Basically, there is a physical, objectively existing external reality that exists independent of our existence. So, and there is a physical universe that exists whether we exist or not, whether mind exists or not. And if you're a physicalist, it is also the idea that everything is physical. So anyway, to kind of sum up here, um, so in terms of Henri Bergson's introduction to metaphysics, he says that there's an external, how did he phrase it exactly here? There is an external reality. There's a reality that is an external and yet given immediately to the mind. So what he's saying there, like I was saying, is that external reality exists, but it's connected to the mind. External physical reality exists, and the non-physical mind exists, but they are connected. So there is the physical and the non-physical, but they're connected. So it's not dualism either, because like I said, dualism would mean that the physical and the non-physical are not connected. So he's saying, so it's very different, and this was so seminal for metaphysics because he's saying that there is an external reality and a mind, and they're connected. So real idealism and metaphysical idealism and realism are wrong, because it's not the case that everything is mind or non-physical, and realism is wrong because it's not the case that everything is mind or non-physical. It's the case that there is an externally existing physical objective reality, but there is also our non-physical minds, and they're both interconnected and influencing each other all the time. All right, so I think that's all about all I need to say about that. Hope I did a good job of explaining that there. Hope you found that as fascinating as I did. I think Metaphysics is really fascinating to think about and learn about, and it's one of the many reasons that I'm interested in philosophy and even religion too. It's one of the aspects that made me more interested in religion than I used to be, because I used to be an atheist. Now I'm might consider myself an agnostic, and I like learning about different religions and different aspects of them, especially because religion has a lot to do with metaphysics, and metaphysics is like that aspect of religion, but way more complex. Anyway, I've said enough about this, and so thanks a lot for watching. Look forward to more videos in the series that I'm going to continue. Subscribe to that channel if you haven't done so already. A lot of people watch the videos and don't subscribe, so please do so. It costs you nothing and it helps me a lot. Click that click that like button, smash it, make love to it, do anything you want to do to it. Just make sure you like it and share this everywhere. Share your mindgasms all over the world with everyone. Click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. My last one was a clip from my video in which I'm commenting on the historian Yuval Noah Harari's speculation in his video that AI could eventually evolve to the point where it could write a new holy book and start a new religion that is the one correct religion. So I'm commenting on whether AI could evolve to become a god and write a new Bible or a new holy book. So check that out. And my next video, my next video will be another clip from my video about the the Hegelian / Lacanian / Marxist philosopher Slavoj Žižek's book called Less Than Nothing, the paragraph in which I'm commenting on him criticizing Kant's categorical imperative because the ambiguity or perhaps somewhat existentialist aspects of it left open enough space for Nazis to use it as a false intellectual justification for their atrocities in World War II. So check that out that upcoming clip as well, and check out my Patreon page as well. The link for that is in the description of the video as always. And most importantly, always remember this, like I always say, the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And philosophy, and specifically metaphysics, along with many other realms of philosophy, are fascinating. Let me know what you think about physicalism versus idealism, and whether you think Henri Bergson is right that dualism is a false dichotomy, because both idealism and realism are wrong, because both the physical and the non-physical, or both the physical externally existing universe and the mind exist. And spread all these fascinating philosophical mindgasms everywhere, and share your mindgasms in the comments. All right. Thanks everyone again, and adios until next time.